It's been 5 years since God of War 2018 has been released, and I can't believe it's already been that long. I think that it has aged very well, which is why I've decided to take a trip down memory lane and review this game. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. I feel like the direction that they decided to take in this story was the perfect way to continue the story from God of War 3. It made the most sense for Kratos' arc as a character, and they pulled it off quite well in this game. They made him come to terms with his past sins while also developing his distant relationship with his son in such a great way. It managed to tell a compelling story between Kratos and Atreus while they went on a journey together to honor Faye. The world building was also excellent and managed to set up a really believable world in Norse mythology by spreading little bits of information via scrolls and lore markers around the universe. My favorite part of the story was definitely the relationship between Kratos and Atreus, as it was executed so well and it made you sympathize with both of those characters. Another great thing about the story is that once you finish it for the first time, you can experience the story again in a whole new perspective due to important moments that were revealed throughout the story. It was such a great experience, and I truly envy someone who is going to experience this for the first time. The gameplay was quite controversial at first, and I can definitely see why that was the case. It was quite a departure from the combat of the original trilogy, and most people were already used to the old combat system. There were a lot of worries that the new system wouldn't feel as good as the old one, and that it might not stay true to how God of War is supposed to be. In my opinion at least, this was definitely the best they could have done with a new system while honouring the previous system that came before. It is still brutal like the old games, and the combat feels really satisfying to use. The axe was perfect as it felt so good to throw and call back your axe, which was enhanced with the excellent sound design. The amount of creative combos you can create are endless, which helps to keep the combat very fresh. The blades were also another excellent addition that I was not expecting, as it was introduced quite late into the game. It was such a nice way to honour the old games, and it was introduced so well in a scene that I will never forget. The combat of the blades also felt very good, even if it was not as good as the axe. You could still juggle your enemies like in the old games, and there were many of the same combos that you could perform from the older games. You could create some very creative combos if you kept changing between the blades and the axe, and you could also spice some things up with the barehanded combat, which made Kratos feel very powerful. Atreus was also a really good addition in combat. I thought he was going to be a bit of a burden at first, but he can actively stun enemies for you with his arrows, and he can prevent you from getting swarmed by dozens of enemies. I'm glad they went in this direction compared to what they did in The Last of Us, where your companion doesn't play as much of a role in combat. However, the new system lost some elements that made the older combat system special. For example, you can't jump anymore, which means you can't perform air combos like you could in the previous games, which was a bit sad. The old camera angle also helped in some of the old set pieces in the games before that were not present in God of War 2018 due to how the new camera is. Another issue with the gameplay was the limited boss variety that got old really fast. There were too many troll boss fights, and they really should have reduced them. I know that they were not really boss fights, as the deaths did not really intend that to be the case, but if you regard the trolls as a non-boss fight, there aren't many boss fights in this game. The enemy variety of the common enemies were at least good though, as you had many different archetypes that you had to get used to. Despite these issues though, I still think we got a decent combat system that works very well, while still respecting some of the things that made the older games great. It also gets more fun as you get further in the game, as you unlock more combos and more runic attacks that kept the combat engaging. Now let's talk about another big change that is still controversial to this day, and that is the decision to make God of War more of an RPG. Now we have armors that we need to level up, and the world is built in a semi-open world format to accommodate this system. I really like RPGs, so this change never really affected me, but I can understand how many people were sad about this change, as the original games were very linear in nature. The RPG system is quite important, as you need to upgrade your gear, otherwise you will be demolished by enemies who are at a higher level than you due to their thick health bars and overwhelming damage. The only way to avoid this is to play at a lower difficulty level so you don't have to bother with leveling your gear, but I'm sure many fans of the linear approach of God of War still want a challenging experience. So it's kind of a sad situation for these fans as they have to play a game with less challenging combat to avoid the RPG system. This is part of the game that is very opinion based, as you either like RPG systems or you don't. This game will not be the one to change you into an RPG lover if you were never one in the first place. So if you are more of a linear action game fan, you have to play it at a lower difficulty. For me at least, I enjoy the system as I like upgrading gear, but I can see why people will be turned off by this. I also love exploring the world while learning more about it through the stories of Mimir and the lore scattered throughout the world. There is one thing I really appreciate about the new semi-open world format. It allows for more exploration and it's easier to build the lore of that world, as you can have many different details spread out throughout the world as opposed to a linear game where it's more limited in nature. The side activities in this game are decent in my opinion, but not the best I have seen in the game. The best ones are the ones that let the combat systems shine, which is basically the realm of Muspelheim and Niflheim that require you to defeat enemies to get rewards for better gear. The side quests in this game were kinda hit and miss though, as some of them were quite forgettable, while some of them really helped to build the lore of the universe, so yeah, it's kind of a 50-50. Some of them also helped to build the relationship between Kratos and Atreus, which was really neat. However, I wish more of them were more memorable, as there were some really mediocre side quests as well. The collectibles in this game are also kinda the same boat, where some of them are useful like armor upgrades and hull upgrades, while there are some like Odin's ravens that feel very pointless. The ravens feel like they were placed there just to pad out the game, which gave me some flashbacks to some of the mediocre collectibles in some Ubisoft games. Despite all of these problems though, I still feel like the side activities are worth your time and can be enjoyable at times. However, its quality is not as high as the other aspects of this game. God of War 2018 is still great after all these years in my opinion. It took a great direction in developing Kratos as a character and introduced a new combat system that rivals the old one. It definitely has its problems like limited boss variety and some side quests not feeling the best, but the good parts of the game definitely outweigh the bad parts. So, how do you guys feel about God of War 2018? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. And with that being said, this has been 2367 Ruben signing out.